Welcome to the American Small Business League podcast. I am Bruce Titoris, and with me is Kevin Ryan, who is running as a Democrat for the Senate in Illinois in 2026. Campaign's already started. You can learn all about him at runwithkev.com. He is running to make our government work for all of us by removing the corrupt influence of money from our politics. And I could read your career and a little bit of your bio, Kevin, but I first want to say, how are you today?
Great. Thanks for asking, and thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you very much. Why don't you please take a minute or two, just talk about your basic bio, and then I'll start interrogating you about, as we've planned, why you're running and what do you want to do. So what's the basics of your bio that you want people to know?
Sure. So I am a teacher and a Marine Corps veteran. I taught for Chicago Public Schools for 4 years, and now I am a substitute teacher so that I can focus on campaigning full time. And then when I'm Chicago based, I can sub to pay the bills. I also spent 10 years in the Marine Corps Reserve, about five active, five reserve. That brought me to Afghanistan, Africa, Europe, and multiple assignments inside the Pentagon. And that's where I came from. My last assignment was working for the Commandant of the Marine Corps on his personal staff. And when Trump was reelected, I thought that there is a better way for me to serve our country, and that was to come home and to run for office myself. The reason that I'm running is that I see that the Democratic Party has failed. It's failed its members, it's failed the working class, and it's failed to stop what we see going on right now with Trump returning with a vindictive approach to take our country backwards. And so I am running to be a part of that new generation of Americans who will step up and reform the Democratic Party to bring it into the second half of the 21st century, to bring it back to the working class and to reject the donor class. The reason that we're in the situation we are today, I believe, is because Democrats have become exceptional fundraisers. They spend a third or more of their time fundraising, and that's with 1% of the donor class. They're not spending the time with the working class, and because of that, they've lost the working class. And that's why we saw many union members, in many unions, a majority of union members voting for Trump as opposed to Democrats, even though union leadership still supports Democrats. We need to go back to the working class. We need to talk about the things that those people care about. And that's what I'm doing. I'm running to take money out of politics and put it back into the working class by expanding unions and empowering them.
Most ambitious, really incredible. You know, you're not starting at the at a district as for Congress. You're going for the whole enchilada, which is the whole state.
Yes.
Um, I, and you'll relate to this, I imagine. Last week, one evening, I went to a fundraiser for the Democrat Congressional Committee, Campaign Committee, the DCCC. And I heard a couple of them stand up and address the nice little living room we were in, saying things similar to what you just said about the unions. A vast majority, a lot of the members, the rank and file, voted for Donald Trump, even though the leadership of the unions uh, maintained, I guess, their traditional loyalty to the Democrats. Um, Talk about, if you will, a little bit more specifically what you, as a senator from Illinois, will target as your top priorities, please.
Well, sure. The top priority is amending the Constitution. We must amend the Constitution that in a way that codifies three basic principles. One, to assert the Congress's Article 1 authority to regulate elections and to regulate spending in elections so that the Congress can establish spending limits like it did in 1971 and 1974 before the Supreme Court overruled that in Buckley versus Valeo, saying that spending is a form of speech and it's protected. And then fast forward to 2010 with the Citizens United decision, we have to codify that corporations are not people and they do not enjoy the same rights, privileges, and protections as live people, and that money is not speech. So we need to amend the Constitution in this way. And there is so much public support for it. 72% of Americans, Democrats and Republicans alike, want spending limits. Democrats in Congress all say they want spending limits as well. The big problem is Republicans in Congress, not one of them supports spending limits, but their voters do. So there is a path to success here, but we just need someone who's going to act boldly to try and lead the charge. People say that it's impossible to amend the Constitution. It's like, how could you possibly do that? We can barely get any kind of bipartisan legislation through. That's true. It's very hard to amend the Constitution, especially with campaign finance reform. But if we look at the history of campaign finance reform from 1907, the Tillman Act, up to the first Campaign Disclosure Act, to 1971, 1974, the Federal Election Campaign Act, to the bipartisan the McCain-Feingold Act, all of those were done begrudgingly, and they were passed by a reluctant Congress and signed by a reluctant president. Even Gerald Ford's own Solicitor General didn't represent the United States in Buckley versus Vallejo. George W. Bush, when he signed the Bipartisan Campaign Finance Reform Act, said, I have serious reservations about the First Amendment implications in this. It is always passed reluctantly, but the support is there. And Bruce, when I get in my bus and I go downstate in Illinois, it's very red. But when I talk to these people, they tell me they want spending limits. When I ask them, do you think that billionaires and ultra wealthy individuals and corporations should be able to buy our politicians through campaign contributions? Of course not. They believe in the democracy that we celebrate on Independence Day. The support is there. We just have to galvanize it. We have to take it and push it forward. The only time real campaign finance reform has ever happened has been when the popular support is stronger than the incumbent intransients. And it is now. This is the time. There is a formula, and this is the right time to do it. So that is the first thing that I will do.
Okay. I can imagine what I think is the harm and the urgency of getting that kind of money out of politics. Why? What will that solve? What are the problems that that will solve?
Well, when you look at where the money is coming from ultra wealthy individuals and corporations, they're not making donations. They are making investments, and investors want returns on their investments. That's why we see policy that favors them instead of the working class. For example, the PRO Act, which would help expand and empower unions, said no Republican support because they don't want unions to be empowered and stronger. Because if they are, that's going to raise wages and it's going to raise the cost of doing business, and it's going to lower their profits and shareholder value. So the focus of our policy is on the 1% because the 1% is funding all of their elections. And so long as money is the determinant of success in elections, the politicians and elected officials are going to spend their time with that 1%. Why spend time with the 99% when all you need is
Right.
to fund a bunch of TV ads to get them to vote for you for name recognition?
Would and list, if you would, all the things that could help the middle class and the working poor and the literal poor if Congress really represented us because they really weren't so captured by the richest of the rich.
Well, I mean, I think the easiest one is universal health care. Why can't we have universal health care like the rest of the post-industrial world? It's because medical insurance companies make money off of it. Pharmaceutical companies make money off of it. The health industry profits off of this corrupt, broken system. Paid childcare. Why don't we have that? Because who cares? Can you make a profit off of it? No. If you're providing services to the people, who's profiting off of it? It's profit is almost driving our policy. And so if you can't, no, you don't make a profit off of helping the poor. You don't make a profit off of uplifting workers. So
Right.
that's why nothing gets done. That's it's basically our government has come down to a profit-driven model.
And I really, really heard you say at the top how the Democrat Party has failed. You're running as a Democrat. You can obviously list how the Republicans have fallen short, and I'm really listening because I left the Republican Democrat concept a long time ago because I see them as two wings of the same awful bird that serves the richest of the rich. And I could picture you teaching Illinois. Send me, I'm running as a Democrat. You got to run as one of the parties. You've got your reasons for choosing the Democrats. That's fine. You could explain that in 60 seconds, but you could teach all of Illinois. Send me to the Senate to get reforms about the money that influences and captures all the Senate and the House. And you can attract Republicans and Democrats by teaching it's not a Republican or a Democrat issue.
No.
It's really whether or not a senator or a congressman is going to represent the people versus these big money things. I wish you every success just on that. You could run and say, send me there to do that so that I can then teach all the other senators within your circle and hopefully the entire congressional delegation of Illinois that within the first term of that class of the House, you're going to have 6 years. You want to pass this legislation that says this, and this about the financing so that it solves these top 4 or 5 horrible effects or problems and causes these top 3 or 4 brand new solutions and unleashes prosperity along those lines. Is that more or less your campaign plan?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And you could elaborate more about that, or do you want to go to a second or third major issue, Kevin?
Well, so people ask me, like, are you a single issue candidate? And I say, really, it's an every issue candidate or every issue campaign because every issue comes back to the idea of campaign finance reform. And if you look at when money really became an enormous problem in politics, it started with Nixon, and it was in between 71 and 74 with the Federal Election Campaign Act when they're trying to regulate campaign finance. And in that window, Nixon was able to amass a huge campaign coffer through these loopholes. He used that money to fund Watergate and then the cover up for Watergate. And what did we also see during the 70s? That was the advent of the environmental movement. Why, 50 years later, have we not made any progress in combating climate change? It's only gotten worse. Well, big oil and gas has been able to throw money into the elections to buy politicians and then change the narrative by just pumping out misinformation. That's so the climate right there. That's one example. Any issue you care about, it comes back to who has the money to control that issue, and they will control it. Money is power. We all know that money is power, but money should not be power in a democratic society. And that's why we must shield our democratic institutions from that. And look, Bruce, I tell this to people all the time on the campaign shows in the Democratic primary, the 3 other candidates. I mean, think about it. Do you think anything will meaningfully change for anyone if one of them are elected? If someone like me is elected, someone who's trying to set the example by rejecting the multi-million-dollar model, if we have that political upset, that underdog victory, imagine the momentum that we will carry into the United States Senate. And then we take that momentum and we harness it and we drive this issue forward. We get everyone on board. Democrats support campaign finance reform, but they don't have a leader. No one is really driving it home. And I've been cutting my teeth downstate talking to Republican voters, and I know they want this. So once I get into the Senate, once I introduce the joint resolution, I will go down to those red states and I will go to the campgrounds. I will go to the mills. I will go to the workers. I will tell them, I know you want campaign finance reform. Here's our opportunity. We have a joint resolution on the Senate floor right now. Call your senator, email your senator, tell them you demand this to pass. And then I'll do the same thing in the House. And then once we get it through 2/3 of both houses, I will go to the state houses. I will drive this thing forward. We have 6 years in one term, and I believe it is possible to do it. I take great inspiration from a senator from Kansas during the Progressive era, Joseph Bristow. He ran to amend the Constitution to change the election of senators from the state houses to directly elected by the people. He saw corruption in the state houses and he wanted to fix it. He ran on that issue, he won on that issue, and then in a single term, he introduced a joint resolution, passed it through both houses, and saw it ratified into the Constitution. In a single Senate term, he ratified the Constitution and rooted out corruption of his time. This is the corruption of our time, and we have to root it out. So that is my model of success, and this is the most important issue that we need to tackle.
What does that do for Illinois? Why should you represent the people of Illinois for this?
Well, I think if we look at Illinois, everywhere I go, from deep blue Chicago to deep red Southern Illinois, people don't really feel represented. They feel that there is this political machine that kind of runs the show. And it's true. I mean, if we look at our state legislature, half of the legislature in 2024 did not face an opponent in the primary or the general election. They just filed and they got into office. This is half of our state legislature. So party control of the elections and gerrymandering has reduced our democracy. It's hollowing it out. We do not have competitive elections. So taking money out of politics is the first step towards getting competitive elections. We like fair vote Illinois and reform Illinois. These are things we need ranked choice voting. We need nonpartisan primaries. But
What
as
kind of
long as
voting? Rank choice?
ranked choice voting, yes.
Okay. What is that?
So ranked choice voting is when you take there's several candidates. New York City just had this right with the mayoral race. There's several candidates, and you rank them from 1 to 5 or whatever the mechanism they want to use of how many you get to rank. And then if one person does not get a clear majority, they go down and they cross out the bottom one and they start to move the second choice up to the first choice, and then they keep doing this until they cross the first choice, and they keep doing this until they get a clear majority from a single candidate. So ranked choice voting allows people to have more choice, and it's more representative of what people want, as opposed to the binary choices like we have
Right.
now between Democrats and Republicans. I've spoken to so many downstate voters who voted for Trump, not because they like Trump, they just hated Democrats and they thought there was no other option.
So the ranked choice process gets more candidates on the ballot?
No, ranked choice, it's nothing to do with getting on the ballot. It's just about how we choose who's on the ballot. So right now, if in
Okay.
our race, for example, there's 4 candidates on the ballot, you get to vote for one. That's it. But if we had ranked choice voting, you could rank 1 to 4. And that
There's
way,
four. I'm sorry, Kevin. There's four for one position.
yes, and right now for the primary Democratic primary for U.S. Senate in Illinois.
Okay. Okay. And when is that primary? Next year, right?
Yes, March 17th.
Okay.
The idea is getting money out of politics is one step to try and reform our elections, because the parties control the
Oh,
money
yeah.
and the parties control the elections, and we really need to make more competitive elections that are more representative of the will of the people and the voice of the people. And we do that by taking party control out of the elections and instilling ranked choice voting instead. And getting money out of politics is the first step of doing that. And then we
Yeah.
can start electing people who will try to enact these reforms because they're more representative of the people.
Let's say the money's out of it. Let's say candidates like you are not only senators of Illinois, both senators, but also, whatever percentage of the House. Now, what are politicians and representatives and senators like you doing for the people of Illinois, and we'll extrapolate around the country, that improves our lives? What difference does that make in what representatives do for us?
That's a great question. And so I think for me, the most important thing is to remove that barrier. And then we start electing people who are representative of the people, who know the issues of the people, bring those issues forward, and then we'll start to be able to get these popular progressive ideas done, like universal health care, like universal child care, like free education for college, the things that we can fund that we simply don't. So in the United States,
Yeah.
we don't have a lack of resources. We have a lack of will, that we can do these things if we remove the profit-driven model from our government. But really, for me personally, I don't look at having a very long career in politics. I want to amend the Constitution, and then I want to step aside and let other people come in and do the work that needs to be done. That's the whole idea. That's how we create this living dynasty, this living progress. It's not about me. This race is not about me. It's not about a political career of mine. It's about
Um,
leveling the playing field so we can have a more representative democracy moving forward. So we can have people that come and go and move the baton forward.
let's have it. Let's continue this conversation right now, Kevin, like it's just you and I, and it's not for an audience. It's not to teach people about my small business issues later in the conversation, or even to vote for you, but to talk about what you just described, which is what it would take to transform the financing of elections. And you're saying that you have a dream of getting this done in one term as a senator and galvanizing nationwide the force that it would take to do that. And I said you have a dream specifically because I thought, Kevin, I'm thinking for the last few minutes, Kevin, this is more than maybe a 6-year term. So teach me why it's doable in 6 years when I'm picturing you sounding like a Martin Luther King about something as big as the civil rights movement to turn around the entrenched grip of that awfulness. Do you see that analogy, or what do you say to someone who sees it that daunting?
Yeah, I mean, it is daunting, but I do think that this is the moment that it can get done. Now, I'm not saying it can get done in 6 years. I can't predict the future. I say I believe it's possible to do it in 6 years. If we look at the history of campaign finance reform, it has followed a formula of scandal. The scandal creates public outrage. Public outrage gets people like me to run for office, reformers, and then they enact that reform. That's what happened in 1907. That's what happened in the 1970s, and that's what happened in 2002.
I'm on board because let me tell you, because simultaneously, as I've been hearing you, I just think it's an idea whose time has come that it might take just one match, one man, one senator, because it might be a country that is an ocean of gasoline that's ready for this. And maybe you're trying to, maybe you're reporting the readiness, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yes. I'm trying to bring awareness to that this is the time to do it. Some people say it's impossible. I say we don't have a choice. And right now, the iron is hot. This is the time to strike. And now, Bruce, I'm not saying like I'm not campaigning on a promise to only run for one term. I think that can be short-sighted if we're making progress, and maybe it will take another term to get there. But what I'm saying is I don't see myself serving for 5 terms. I think it's important for people to rotate and get in and out. And in fact, I think one thing that would be cool for if we had term limits for senators and representatives to do is to almost to groom someone and say like, will you carry this baton forward? Will you promise to reject the multi-million-dollar model? Will you carry like and then endorse that person, right? And then let the people have a say. But yes, it is a daunting task. But if we get it through the House and Senate, then yeah, it'll take some time to get it through all the state houses as well. And maybe I don't need to be a senator for that, right? Maybe that's
Right,
when I take a
right.
different role and I leave office and let someone else step up to continue the work in the Senate. And I go out to the state houses and campaign for this more like a figure like someone like Dr. King, who was not an elected official but was going out to the people advocating for civil rights. We need bold action right now. We have no shortage of establishment Democrats who know how to play the game and know the rules. It's not working. We need to reach for the ideals of our democracy. Most people I talk to who are involved in the political establishment, they are succumbing to the reality of it instead of reaching for the ideals. And when we succumb to the reality, it is a vicious circle. It's a political arms race that hurts the people. That's not how we win. We win by reaching for our ideals, and that is what I'm doing. I am setting the example, and I'm going to prove that we can win a race to the United States Senate without raising and spending millions of dollars in what is going to be the most expensive race in American history. We need people to live their values, and that's what I'm doing. And so if that's a campaign that excites you, I would invite you to join us because this is a real grassroots campaign, and we need all the help we can get. If Illinois elects one of the other candidates, nothing meaningful will change. Just imagine if a candidate like me won in the most expensive race in American history, someone who rejected the money model. That momentum that we take into the U.S. Senate at this time and period in history, we will be able to amend the Constitution.
Yeah, and maybe you've got this in the works, and maybe there's not enough hours in the day, but your
There
site could
certainly
also
aren't.
have, right, right. But your site could also have pages and pages of like the library of research just since Citizens United, uh,
Sure.
explaining the horror of the problem, the urgency of the need for us to turn ourselves around, because by many measures, people don't listen to politicians and candidates at all anymore because they think we've already jumped the shark. We've already gone over the cliff. We are already irredeemably captured by banking and corporate interests that are just running basically a liquidation sale on the United States. And it doesn't matter who's in the White House or who's in the Senate or who's in the Congress because we can't extricate ourselves from the grips of those who are exploiting us and taking us for all that we're worth. You come from Illinois and you have over your shoulder, for those who are just listening to the audio version of this podcast, a portrait of Abraham Lincoln. What is Lincoln to you? What does he represent or inspire for you?
Abraham Lincoln, I consider him a close friend based off of how much I've read of him. And he's truly an inspiring figure. And this portrait over my shoulder, this is the portrait taken of him in, I think it was in Beardstown in 1858 when he was running for this very same Senate seat. He was not an office holder, and he was running against an entrenched incumbent with a lot of money. As I'm on the campaign trail, I'm at these events with like Raja Krishnamurthy, who has somewhere around $25 million in the bank account. And I'll speak after him. And it reminds me of when Lincoln was following Douglas on the campaign trail and would just speak after Douglas because the audience was already there. And then at some point, Lincoln just told Douglas, and he said, what if we just had 7 debates and we just joined this canvas together instead of, what we're doing right now? And I use that as a model of what this Democratic primary could be. We all the other candidates in this race, they all say we need to end Citizens United, we need to get money out of politics, but then they go and raise millions of dollars. And this goes back to your point about like, well, no one listens to politicians because they say one thing, do another. Well, this is just the game. Yes, it is the game. In the general elections, it doesn't have to be in the primary. We could all agree to spend no money on advertising because that's where the majority of this money goes. Around 80% of campaign funds go towards advertising. We could set spending limits for operations only. And then we could have, taking a page from history, our own series of debates. And I think it would be great if we went to the same towns where Abraham Lincoln and Stephen Douglas debated in Illinois, because they did not debate in Chicago. They went outside of it to Western, Northern, and Southern Illinois. And those towns often feel forgotten by Cook County. So I think this would be a great way for us to exemplify and live our values and say, let's choose in our primaries the best candidate with the best ideas and the best morals and character, not the one with the most money capable of purchasing name recognition. I know they won't do that, but that is what proves that they care more about their own political careers and ambitions and success than they do about the health of our party and the health of the democracy. If they cared more about the health of our democracy, they would agree to debate. But they're afraid because they know once they're on the stage with me, it's a level playing field. And they know that I'm going to throw the arrows that they can't defend against, that they have been bought and purchased by ultra wealthy individuals and corporations, because that's the game they grew up with. That's the game they know. And that's the game that, as you said, is liquidating our country.
You have an amazing opportunity being a student of Lincoln in Illinois with an issue like he grabbed that slavery extension into the territories issue,
Mhm.
which was the arguably the top incendiary problem or issue challenging the union of the states at the time. What was Lincoln's political genius? It was his human genius. It was his appreciation of what moved people and what was good for them. On your website, you have a very intriguing quote by Lincoln. The dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate for the stormy present. We must think anew and act anew to shake off the lethargy that has trained so many Americans that we're powerless. We can't do anything, as evident by your telling me how many politicians in Illinois recently ran unopposed. So if they got backed by the right money, they work for the forces that gave them that money. There's just no other way you can deny it. So before we move into my small business issues, what would you summarize and sum up about everything we've discussed so far?
Well, I'm glad you brought up that quote, and I have that in my signature block on my emails. But there's a very important part of that quote that I omitted that says the occasion is piled high with difficulty, and we must rise to the occasion. That is where we're at. When people say, oh, amending the Constitution is impossible, you're a dreamer, you're never going to get money out of politics. We must, if you care about the continuation of the American experiment, if you want to be able to hand to children and grandchildren an American democracy that is a representative government, we must do this. We have to take money out of politics. And yes, the occasion is piled high with difficulty, but we must rise to the occasion. And as our case is new, so must we think and act anew. We must disenthrall ourselves, and then we shall save our country. We must disenthrall ourselves from the corporate control of our elections. Just as slavery was the great crack in the foundation of our democracy in Lincoln's time, unlimited political spending is the great crack in our democracy. We must mend it, otherwise we will lose our democracy. The American experiment will fail.
It's about getting the money out, because then in that vacuum we can rush in. We can be heard by representatives who would then be able to actually uh, rise or fall because of how well they serve their constituents. Right now,
Yes.
they don't rise or fall because of how well they serve us. They rise or fall because of how much money they can collect in their campaign coffers by big donors.
Yes, and they spend all that time with the donors instead of the working class and ordinary people. And we
Mm-hmm.
need to return that. The Democratic Party needs to return to its New Deal roots. That's the only way to do that is by taking money out of politics.
When you criticize how the Democrats have been doing things lately, and I thought, wow, if Kevin runs as, listen, I'm running as a Democrat, you say, but I want to appeal to just all voters.
I appeal to Republican voters as well, and I make a very important distinction between elected Republicans and Republican voters, or people who typically vote Republican. Because elected
Yeah,
Republicans in Congress they have exhibited no indication that they want to support the working class. Otherwise, they would have passed the PRO Act. All of them are
right,
against campaign finance reform and all the measures that have ever been introduced in the Senate and the House.
right,
So they are lost
right,
cause in my eyes. The only way to do this is
right.
to lead the Democratic Party in getting Republican voters to pressure their representatives and senators.
Hearing one side or the other complain about the other, it's a mute button for me. It's like, I can't hear that anymore. But if you said this issue is nonpartisan and here's why, I'll listen all day long. And I think a large part of the brain dead, just for our own survival, we turn it off because we are so ready to leave negativity
Yes, I
in the
agree.
past.
I
That's
agree.
just my personal exhaustion at this age. With your permission, let me describe the small business issue we proposed to you in our intro letter. We're the American Small Business League. We're an advocacy group trying to stop the diversion of small business contracts to big businesses. That's a huge scandal and cover up going on that we might be able to get into. But specifically, we reached out to you about our Don't Cheat Women project, which simply wants to do this: raise from 5% to 15% the amount of federal contract dollars that are supposed to go to women owned small businesses. What that would do is raise from 23% to 33% the overall contract dollars that would go to small businesses in general, which would create 3.3 million new jobs. It would pour $264 billion into the small business economy, the middle class economy, and create a huge economic boom. And most people don't know, or a lot of people don't know, that the United States is a small business nation, that 98% of all businesses have less than 100 employees. And the problem is, Kevin, and then I'll get, I want to hear what you think about all this, whether you've heard it before and, what would it take for you to say, Bruce, I'm going to bring that in when I can. I'm busy trying to teach about other issues. It's the fact that every year the SBA says, we gave that many, 23% to small businesses. In fact, we gave more, but it's a lie. For 35 years, we've won 100 plus legal victories. Our founder, Lloyd Chapman, has won, and then we've only been around since 2004. But for 35 years, Lloyd Chapman has won 100 plus legal victories, showing that every year, billions of dollars in small business contracts go to big businesses. Moreover, dozens of congressional investigations have shown that, and many reports from the SBA's own Office of Inspector General. So we have never had a president nor an administrator at the SBA who's told us the truth. So if anybody searches this, you're going to think, well, Bruce is lying. But you have to go to our site, asbl.com, to see the verification of it. We emailed you some, you know, to say, run on this, try this, but specifically to your women, constituents in your state, to say, hey, listen, we don't think it's fair that women who are half the population, here's an important fact, women own 40% of all businesses in the United States. But the law says the federal government only must give them 5% of federal contracts. Why should companies owned by men get 95% of all federal contracts? And that's if they actually gave women that 5%. They really, really give them a tiny, tiny fraction of that. So that's the outrageous situation we wanted to make known to you, Kevin. What do you make about all that?
Well, I mean, my first impression was going to say that yes, of course, we should increase the from 5 to 15% overall 33%, and I think that's a good stepping stone to try to get that up to just 50% of contracts going to small businesses. But what I was going to say is the issue is not necessarily the benchmark, but it's making sure that that money is actually getting sent to small businesses, which you brought up and went in depth. And I also think it's poignant that today is August 26th, the same day as the National Women's Strike in 1970. And when they took the streets in New York City and did sit-ins across the country and civic protests, they demanded three things: access to abortion, access to free childcare, and equal opportunity in work and education. And we are still trying to fight for those things today. So they say the SBA says this money is going to these small businesses, but it's not. It's going to these conglomerates or ultra wealthy corporations. My question to you would be: how much are those small businesses contributing to the chair of the committee that oversees SBA? How much are those small businesses contributing to presidential campaigns? Right now, let's look at the other side of the coin. How much are these corporations contributing to super PACs that fund the TV ads and attack ads for the chairs of these committees and for specific key, like senators that are key votes, and for presidential candidates? I mean, it comes back to our central point. The reason that no one cares about the small businesses not getting their contract, not having contracts being funneled to them, is because corporations control things with their money and influence, and they control our politicians, and they control the Small Business Administration. So this all goes back to that core issue. That's why when I tell people money in politics is the core issue, it all comes back to it, no matter what issue you care about. And so when we do get money out of politics, Bruce, I think you should run, right? You run and you get in there and you start to change things up, and you get people to run with you. And that's just one example of like the vision of where we could take our country. But we already talked about money in politics, so I'm not going to go back down that rabbit hole. I just wanted to make that connection.
It's such a valid point, and it's so spot on. And I'll just add, like, another reason we're promoting this is because when women owned businesses get just a fair amount of the economic opportunity, it helps their political power, because of the correlation of the fact that men have more political power simply because they earn and they save more than women. So if women had more economic fairness and were able to make as much as men just on the value of their contribution, the value of their work, the value of their intelligence, this is what would change. Right now, because women earn and save less, men contribute more, they donate more, and their corporations donate more to candidates who become office holders. So men have more political influence. It's also far easier for wealthier men to run for office. Here come the statistics. 75% of seats in the House, seats in the Senate, and in all state legislatures are held by men. Almost that many governorships, 68% or so, are held by men. 90% of committee chair positions and party leadership positions are held by men. And there is a tilt away from the issues that women reliably report. These are the things that are more important to us than for men. And these are the things that are neglected as policy because men sit in such majorities of positions. So that's what's at stake about shifting, getting equity for in the all economic realms so that women can participate as human equals civically and in politics. And I'm going to say your final thoughts about everything we've talked about or anything we haven't, Kevin.
For anyone who isn't totally aware of how the contracts work with the federal government and small businesses, I mean, I'm pretty sure the federal government is the largest buyer in the world, right?
It is.
So this is the scale that we're talking about. It's not just a small government program. It's like, no, we're talking about the number one purchaser in the world
Of goods and services. Yep.
Right. And that's why when you have something, an entity like that is publicly funded, that publicly funded money should be going towards small businesses, not further enriching corporations who then take that money and then control our politics. It's this vicious circle. It's a great example of why I'm running. Because that we need to stop it. We need to stop allowing corporations and ultra wealthy individuals to further enrich themselves by controlling the levers of our government. We need to give the workers, the independent farmers, and the small business owners a fair chance. And this is the same exact platform that the Republican Party in 1860 was running on, right? And nothing has changed today. We need to run on this platform again.
Kevin Ryan, runwithkev.com, running for the Senate in Illinois. It's been an honor and a privilege. And I want to thank you, and I want to thank everybody for watching and listening today.